Shindig underway. Thank you all very much for coming. Welcome to Fact and Fiction and to the Central Wisconsin Book Festival. This is event number 4 of 19. Lots going on this weekend, especially tomorrow. It's going to be a really busy day, a really fun day. It's already been a great time so far. We had a lot of fun last night with the UW faculty reading. The Trace Art and Poetry exhibit at the Center for Visual Arts is incredible. You should check that out sometime this weekend or on into mid-November. We've worked for quite a while to try and bring a great lineup this year, or try and organize a great lineup this year, and hopefully we've succeeded in that. If not, we'll try again next year. So, my name is Chad Daly. I work for the Marathon County Public Library, where some of the events will be held. And I certainly have not, I've been working on this festival, but definitely have not worked alone on it. I've had lots of help, in particular from Jill Stukenberg and Julie Bunchak. The three of us have been meeting regularly. Kathy Sturley, who was with the Wisconsin Fellowship of Poets, worked with the Center for the Visual Arts worked with their staff to set up that exhibit. The staff at Yankee Bookstore and Barnes & Noble have things going on as well this weekend. So if you are curious, see what's happening tomorrow. Out in the hallway, there's a handout with a full schedule of events. We will be back here 23 and a half hours from now for Dan Kaufman, who will be talking about his new book, The Fall of Wisconsin, which is getting national attention, as is Dan himself. So we're really looking forward to that. And looking forward tonight. It's going to be a fun night. This is one of the events that we did last year, and folks seem to enjoy it. We enjoyed it ourselves. So we're trying it again this year, and we've added a theme as well. Grace is our theme for tonight. So all of the stories you'll hear tonight have something to do in one way or another with the theme of grace. Before we get to introductions for our MC, our host for the evening, do have some other folks to thank. We've had a lot of support for this festival, in particular provided through the Community Arts Grant Program of the Community Foundation of North Central Wisconsin, with funds provided by the Wisconsin Arts Board, a state agency, the Community Foundation, and the B.A. and Esther Greenheck Foundation. We also had financial support from the Marathon County Public Library Foundation and the Friends of the Marathon County Public Library, other support, promotional and otherwise, by Wisconsin Public Radio, the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point at Wausau Lecture and Fine Arts Series, Center for the Visual Arts, the Wisconsin Fellowship of Poets, Barnes & Noble, and Yankee Bookstore. So it takes a village to create a festival for the whole village, I guess, to be corny about it, but yeah. So we're really thankful for all of this support, especially funding-wise. It's allowed us to bring folks not only like Dan Kaufman and Lowell Yeager, who will be at the library tomorrow afternoon, but also, yes, I know, he's here right now. Yep, I wasn't going to single him out, but that's okay. Yes, so not only does it allow us to bring folks like them into town to talk to you folks, but it also allows us to help promote the festival, and best of all, to offer up all of these events for free. So very happy about that as well. All right, on with the show. Our host tonight, as he was last year, and maybe he will be next year, we'll see how it goes, Charles Monroe Kane. He is a producer and interviewer for the national syndicated radio program To the Best of Our Knowledge, and author of the 2016 memoir, Lithium Jesus. Prior to his work on public radio, he made pottery in Costa Rica, started a record label in Amsterdam, and an internet cafe in Prague, back when that was, internet cafes were a thing. Well, I guess they still are, I don't know. And ran a circus, among other odd and all meanings of the word jobs. We're very happy to have him here, and very thankful for our storytellers to share their stories tonight as well. So please welcome Charles Monroe Kane.
Wow, he's hired. That's good. How's everybody? You guys ready for some stories? Yeah, there you go. You can clap more. We're laid back, so you can interrupt me, you can clap, get up, take a pee, do whatever, hiss. Don't worry about it. It's all good. Do people want to sit where they're sitting? You want to like get closer together in the middle and be more of like a hug, community hug, or are you cool with where you are? If you're like, I'm cool with where I am, dude. Fine. I feel like I'm in like my aunt's Lutheran church where nobody goes. It feels kind of bad. I feel bad. I'm the preacher that nobody goes to his church. You know, I do the show to the best of our knowledge, as you know, interview people and produce that show. And to the best of our knowledge is primarily an interview show, right? I interview an author or a thinker and edit it and put it on the air. But it's a storytelling show, really, because what I'm doing, if I interview you about something, about your book, what I'm trying to get isn't like these small t truths, right? The truths that are like 8 + 8 = 16. You know, that's not what we do. We're trying to get at bigger T truths, the greater truths of the universe and of society, of who we are. And the best way to get at greater truths is through story. And we tell people, and we pre-interview all of our guests, and we tell them time and time again, if you want to communicate, if you're a cosmologist from South Africa and you've made a recent discovery about a star, you got different ways you could communicate that, and some of them are really boring. Or, what's the story? What was the moment like of discovery, right? What is it? You know, how can you tie that into the greater culture? Because it's all about story. And I want to. It's been said time again that there's only two kinds of stories, right? And tonight, think about this when you hear these stories tonight, that there are only two kinds of stories. Number one, a stranger comes to town. And number two, someone takes a journey, right? So those are your only two stories that are out there. Stranger comes to town, someone takes a journey. It's because the human story is universal. So think about those two when you hear people's stories tonight. I don't say that to diminish the stories you're going to hear. People work very hard to write these stories and work on performing these stories, but to uplift the story and make it possible that you too can tell your story, whatever medium you choose. If you're a poet, you're a musician, you know, there's different ways to tell stories, but it's really as simple as those two ideas. So if you don't feel intimidated by being a storyteller, don't, because it's just a stranger comes to town or someone takes a journey. It's that simple. I'm sure Tolstoy felt that way too. It's easy, just write it down. It's really simple. And I'm going to do these. They might sound boring, but think about this. Then if you break down a stranger comes to town and someone takes a journey, there's only the atoms break down to only 4 little parts. And again, I tell you this to think about how easy it is for you to be able to tell your own story. Right? That's the goal here, is for me to convince you that next year you do this, or in your own life that you tell a story. The first part of the story is motivation, right? Who's speaking? You know, why does it matter? Why does it matter that this person's speaking? Public radio, and Ira Glass in public radio was really famous for saying this. Like, the difference between public radio and commercial radio isn't the money part and isn't the shock jocks in the morning, all that stuff. The difference is that when we say something, we try to have it matter. It's supposed to mean something, right? And so basically, motivation, what does it mean? Then the next thing is exposition, basically, what happened, right? If you can't tell a story if you don't say what happened, you know? You know, so the guy, the stranger came to town. What happened? Did he walk into the saloon with a 6-shooter? I mean, what happened when he got there, right? Next, and I think this is a very big public radio thing here, is the life-changing event, the unexpected twist, you know? And if you listen to a lot of public radio, you get that in really good stories that you read and really good stories you hear. Suddenly it's like, whoa, I wasn't getting that. Wow, you know? And like the unexpected event. And last but not least, catharsis. How have you been changed by the story you just told? What's the moral to the story, right? It's that simple, those 4 things, and that's all you have to do. So if you sit down and think about that, that's the story you can tell, and all of you can tell that. And the thing is, you do it already, right? When grandma shares the story, you know, about the one-room schoolhouse, if it's a good story, she's already doing it, right? So just keep that in mind when you're doing it. And I think the last thing to keep in mind, and I think this is extremely important, is that stories are important, right? And for me, it's a quick story. For me, I wrote a book. My book is, I have a mental illness. The book is about mental illness. So some people came to my book readings in a more serious fashion, right? Other people with mental illness, and they come to the book readings, and I knew that was more serious. I try not to be flippant while I was there. I was a little flippant, but try not to be too flippant. And I went to a reading, I want to say it was in San Diego. I think it was in San Diego or Dallas, is on that side of the country. And at the end of it, a man came up and did a reading about this size thing. He had a folded up piece of paper. He walks up, older guy, kind of struggling to walk. He hands me the piece of paper and he walks off. I didn't read it, right? And I open up, and there's a sticky note on the piece of paper. It had yes or no written on it, and he circled no. And that was a sticky note. And inside was a suicide note. And I was like, oh my God. He decided that night if he was going to kill himself or not based on my presentation to the story that I was going to tell, if he would relate to it or not. It's a bit heavy. We don't all live our lives with dudes killing themselves based on our story. That's not going to happen tonight, guys. But stories are important. Your grandmother's recipe is important. Grandpa's barbecue sauce is important. You know, the stories of our culture are important. There's a reason people are going to 23, 23andMe, is that how it's called? And the different things for DNA. Like, people want to know who they are. They want to know their story. They want to know where they're from. And it's very important that we share our stories with each other. So that's it. That was my little intro. That's good. So now you're ready, right? Ready for some stories? Oh, there you go. That's good. But I will say real quick, tell a story to someone this week. Okay? Someone other than yourself. Tell a story to someone this week. A true story, and mean it. Right? 5 minutes, but tell a story. Not how your day was. Tell a story that has meaning. Tell a story that has a catharsis. Tell a story that you want to share with some other person. Just do it once. I think you'll find it to be a very powerful experience. So we have not decided the order of who's coming up. And I have everyone's names here. So I have to pick somebody. Matthew, you're going to be first. I pick because he has a beard. Pick on the guys with beards. It's like a thing I do. He's going to come up. Here you go. Clap for Matthew. And Matthew, we're going to say something real quick before we start. First, I want you to introduce yourself and who you are. Okay. But I want to tell everybody that not only are we telling stories tonight, but this is a competition, and you are the judges of the competition. We don't have a clap-o-meter, which is really annoying. We're going to talk about that, Chad, you guys, later. It's crap. But we will decide based on your clapping who wins, and there's actual prizes. Vanna, could you stand up and show people? It's a big bag of cool stuff, and it's a Best for Knowledge bag. Nice. It's wrapped up. Nice. So no pressure to all you guys doing, but that is a Best for Knowledge tote bag, so with stuff in it. So introduce yourself, and this is a competition, so be rough and tough on these guys. Bye.
All right. I made a tactical error and told Charles I wasn't that nervous before, so here I am going first. My name is Matt Cypress. Anything else, Charles? More than that. Sure. My name is Matt Cypress. I teach English at DC Everett Senior High School. One of my colleagues is here tonight, being very supportive. I have a former student here who's going to tell a story as well. So I feel like it's a good room to be in and a good warm place to be in. No better place to be on a Friday night. So. The story I have to tell is not usually something that happens on a Tuesday. It involves when I pulled into a bank in downtown Wausau and pulled into the drive-through teller space, and I was all ready to go to make my deposit. I had my slip in my hand, I had my pen, everything was all prepared, and I pulled up, and inside the tube there in the daylight was $1,200 in cash. It's a very tidy bundle just sitting there. That was the face that I made. And I looked at it, and at first I thought that, obviously you have all the thoughts that you would have in that moment. You have disbelief, you have shock. I looked around at the security cameras. I looked around for either Jamie Kennedy or Alan Funk or, any of the candid camera style situations. I was running through all the phases of what could potentially be going on. But it was none of those things. It was just $1,200 sitting there and looking at me. So I gave thought for a moment about driving to a casino, and I thought of the bills that I could take care of and all the things that one would run through in their head when they are presented with such a situation. But being a public educator and being a good central Wisconsin boy, I took the tube and put it in my car and then immediately pulled into a parking spot. And I walked directly into the bank. And inside the bank, it is a more secure space, and I see two tellers just doing their thing, being bankers. And I walk in the space, and I'm holding my check, and I'm holding $1,200 in cash in a plastic tube. And I walk up to the sort of glass space, and I gently set the tube down, and I hit the buzzer. Teller comes over and says, "May I help you?" I say, "Yeah, I found this," and hold it up, and her eyes became dinner plates. And she started 14 sentences. Okay. Put it through the pass-through. And shunk, shunk, she opens the gigantic metal pass-through door, and I set the tube inside. Shunk, shunk, close it up. She puts it through, and I see a sub-conversation starting to happen between the two tellers, trying to determine what to do, and I stand and wait patiently to deposit my $42 check and this new discovery. And all the while, I'm running through, the potential outcomes and what this money could be, how it got there. And I see this all happening, and the tellers really don't have a clear decision. They don't have a clear conclusion. So I say, I guess this is where we leave. And I feel good about myself. I'm thinking, this is the good deed story. I did my job. Hooray for me. I head back to my car. I get in the car, and you think all the cosmic thoughts that you do at that point of how there's folks walking around the world who to find $1,200 would completely change the trajectory of their life. And then you have the thoughts of, man, there's people walking around with $1,200 in cash every single day. That's just pocket money. That's folding money. And then the regular people, where you go, wow, that is a significant amount of money. But I also was not in a place where I was thinking, man, I can't pay my mortgage. I should really take this. I can't pay this car payment. I should really take this. Those thoughts never occurred to me. I was thinking primarily more those big, heavy thoughts about those who would matter tremendously to and those who wouldn't give it a second thought. So I backed my car out, ready to go home and tell my wife what a good guy I am. And as I put my car in reverse, I look in my mirror and I see the teller again. She's kind of hot-footing it out of there. And I see her, thinking perhaps she's come back to give me some sort of certificate. I roll down my window and I say, "Yes?" And she says, "My manager would like to speak with you." And then the tenor changed again. So I put my car in park and unbuckled my seatbelt and followed her inside. And it went from positive good deed story to Incredible Hulk story. As I was running through all of the things that I was going to do, because as with every step that I took towards that space, I realized they think I did something wrong. The tone of how they were behaving was changing inside. So I walk in, and already I'm mentally closing my account. I'm drafting strongly worded emails. I'm ready to throw a chair through the window and burn the place down. It's you run through all those things that you do in those moments. And as this occurs, a man who appears to be about 800 years old enters the bank. And his hand is sort of clawed in this fashion, and very clearly arthritic. His hands reminded me of my grandfather's hands. And he had something clutched, and he had the classic old guy walk into the bank, very much a walk that my grandfather had as well. And he came in, and I'm watching the teller start to sort it out, and I'm running through all of these angry scenarios. And he walks up to the window, and they attempt to help him, and he says, "I think I forgot something." And I see, as he sets it down in his hand, there's a deposit slip for $1,500 and then $300 in cash. And then I did math. And I realized with those hands that what had happened was that was part of the money that he had withdrawn. He had left somehow with his arthritic hands, $1,200 in cash just sitting in a tube, and he had gone away and had the realization as he had come back that this is what was going on. So he wheeled his car back around, he came back, and as he set that down and as the tellers took a look at that, their tenor changed again. And I could see the teller whose eyes had grown so big before. And really the look on her face said, "We figured it out!" And it changed once again. So there we stood. The mystery had been solved. And then all those things that I had invented in my mind started to kick in again. I thought, wow, what a good guy I am. Him and Helen, who I made up, that was their vacation money. Or, their insurance. Now their insurance is okay. He can get what he needs. I had concocted these scenarios again that showed who was the best. So we get this piece together. He gets his money back and everything is fine. And again, because he reminded me of my grandfather, and I looked at him and I went, oh, wow, you drove here. That seemed like a bad thing just because of his physical state. So I walked him out to the parking lot. And we shuffled out there together. And then as he got to the car and as we were getting closer to his vehicle, he did the thing that my grandfather used to do as well, which is sort of talk to you, but also talk to the world. I don't know how the heck that happened. I just can't understand it. I mean, I don't know, how does somebody leave that kind of money in there? And I could only agree with him. I agree with you. I don't know how that kind of thing could happen. I don't know, but gosh, I'm glad we got it figured out. We get to the vehicle and he opens his car door. And inside the envelope, he starts to rifle through the bills. And I go, sir, you really, you don't have to, it's fine. I'm glad we got it sorted out. No. And he goes and he pulls out $20. He shoves it in my hand. You take that, you buy yourself a beer. So I did. I did exactly that, because when an 800-year-old man tells you to do something, you do it. And I said, thank you, I really appreciate that, thank you, sir. I'm glad we got it figured out. And then he sat down in his car seat. He was about to close the door. He said, don't worry about it, it was my son-in-law's money anyway. Wham, and he closed the door. And out he pulled. And I was just left there standing there with $20 and thinking, wow, somehow $20 is worth more than $1,200. Thanks.
Hey, Matthew, stay there. Now you get the beauty of me talking to you afterwards. So
we have a conversation now?
Yeah, I have a conversation. Cool. It's the thing we do. It's kind of cute. So did you like see a flyer or get an email that there was going to be this story thing about Grace? And you're like, oh, I know this story? Or
I didn't think it, I got the flyer and the thing, and Jill emailed me and knew the event. And I've always wanted to try something like this.
Right.
But I didn't think immediately that story was the Grace story. I knew that was a story I knew how to tell pretty well. So
this is this your first time on stage doing this?
This is my first time on stage.
What do you guys think of that? That's pretty good. I think he did the old man shuffle really well. I'd say that was pretty good. So will you do this again? You think you'll try to do another storytelling again?
Yeah, I would totally do it again. It was we sort of talked a little bit earlier, the notion of once you get up here and you, that energy starts moving and you tap into a story, you have some degree of comfort with. The rest kind of falls together if you just, like you said, if you focus on that stories are important.
So you're not going to pass out right now?
I think I'm good.
Okay, it's good. All right, thank you very much,
Thanks,
Matthew. I was going to ask somebody to come up to read, but I do not see her. Oh, yeah, I do. Want to come up next? Yeah, Rachel, do you want to come up next? Yeah, Rachel. I'm a big fan of Rachel, so everybody enjoy Rachel's story, and I'll be right back out. Rachel, how are you? Come on, keep going. It's good. Stage is big up here. How you doing, Rachel? Ready to go?
As ready as I'll ever be.
Excellent. All right, everyone, one more time, a round of applause for Rachel.
Is this on? It is on. Okay. I have had no grace in my life recently. Over the course of the past month, I have been through many trials I didn't think an 18-year-old would ever have to go through. There has been many mornings where I have woken up kind of wishing that I didn't, and it's not a good feeling. I've lost friends, not by choice. I've had to find a new job in a week and quit my job of 2 years, very much so reluctantly. And so when Jill Stukenberg comes up to me after our mush meeting and asks me, are you going to tell a story about Grace? I kind of wanted to laugh in her face and tell her, why would you ask me that kind of question? But of course she didn't know what was going on in my life, and so I just kind of smiled at her and said, yeah, I'll think about it, maybe I'll write something up, and then went home and was like, no, it's not going to happen. I'm just going to continue living my sad and depressed life as an 18-year-old and get through it eventually. But of course, being the writer that I am, because I am an author, I could not stop thinking about this topic of grace and what I would write about if I was in a much better place and wanted to talk about grace. And somehow, out of nowhere, all these signs of grace started popping out at me, and I actually was kind of annoyed about it because I wanted to stay in my sad, self-pitying state and let myself go through the motions and get through this. And I didn't really realize that I was digging a deeper hole than I probably should have been. Transitioning into college was very difficult. I live on my own now, so my father, who is my best friend, lives an hour away, and so trying to see him on a regular basis typically does not happen. And again, like losing or switching my job of 2 years and crying to my boss about all of my problems, and I started to see very slowly but surely, the closer the due date came to having this story for Grace done, that there are so many signs of grace in my life. For example, my best friend, who now lives a state away, which was also a very difficult transition, packages from her started appearing at my door unexpectedly. One was a warm blanket because she knew how alone I felt, because I spend a lot of time at home alone if I am not at school or work. I love her, she's great. And my high school group, my group of my favorite people, including Mr. Seapress and all of my CW2 students who are juniors and seniors, showed up at an event with Lowell Yager, and we spent 2 hours talking about all of the great things about poetry and how poetry is supposed to be alive and exciting, and helped start to bring me back to life. This week, there was a man standing outside of the school building as I was walking in, my coffee in hand, minding my own business and just wanting to get to math and hoping everybody would leave me alone, asked me if I wanted a Bible. And me and the big man upstairs are not on very good terms right now, but I smiled and I said yes, and I took the Bible in my hands and I felt something, and little did I know that I felt grace until this evening. Grace was shown to me tonight as we all sat around and talked about how we were going to tell these stories of grace, and being told that my story is actually pretty good and that maybe I should consider it. And it was just very ironic for me to find out that there was all these signs of grace around me when I was choosing to ignore them. Actually, now that I think about it, another sign of grace is standing in this room, and she is right over there as she talks to me every morning and asks how my day is doing and hopes that I have a good day and that I do great on my tests and whatnot. But not to get on my own ramble, which I tend to do a lot, and told C-Press that I was very nervous about. It was just so ironic that being asked to write a story about grace and not wanting to helped me find this new realization that there is so much grace in my life and so much good that I should focus on instead of all of the bad things. And if that wasn't proof enough to figure out why I should tell a story about grace, I found it right here. Thank you. Oh.
Come on, talk. Yeah, this works. Come talk. Yeah, go put it back in. Put it back in. So, did everybody see what's on the rock? Okay, maybe you could guess. Anybody think what's written on the rocks you found? Look at that. You guys are smart. You know. So, if I could share with people, is that, so we met, what, hour ago?
Yeah.
And you didn't have a story. You weren't going to tell a story at all.
Mm-mm.
So she did the whole story on the fly right now, which is good. Tell them about the rock. Tell them about finding the rock. How did you find the rock?
Oh yeah, I got kind of caught away, and I guess I didn't
that's
tell
fine.
them.
How'd you find the rock?
Actually, a couple of friends and I meet together like on Mondays and Wednesdays during our free period in the union to do our homework and look at memes and all that fun stuff. And I was actually walking in thinking about if I was going to change my mind about writing a story about grace, which, fun fact, I'm actually not a storyteller, I am a poet, so telling a story was also very intimidating. But I had set my books down and I saw this rock sitting in the windowsill, and C-Press and I have spent the summer talking about how we should do the WASA, paints rocks and set them around, and I went and grabbed it and I said, "What's this?" And my friend said, "Oh, well, that's been sitting there for a couple of days and no one picked it up." And I turned it over, and of course, the rock said grace on it as soon as I was thinking about it, which was really ironic. And so I sent a photo of it to Jill and Mr. Seapress, and that's that. I thought it was kind of funny because I was thinking about how much grace sucked. So
I would say the last thing is that it's kind of funny, but it's kind of deep. I mean, it seems a little universe sending you the rock thing. Are you going to keep the rock, I would assume?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
That's a keeper.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for coming out. That's great. That's awesome. Again, she just made that up and did that tonight. What are you doing? You're gonna do a story later? I'm gonna keep bugging you about that. It's gonna be in your brain. You gotta do a story. You gotta email me later. All you guys can email me. I did a story. I told my uncle. So you gotta do the story. So how's everybody doing? You guys having fun? We're keeping. Oh, there you go. Keep in mind you're gonna have to vote on these later, so you gotta keep that in mind. We're gonna keep it moving along and have another person come up. And I think I try to get all the names connected to the faces, but Emily is next. And Emily's, I'm not supposed to say you're nervous. I'm sorry, that ruins it, doesn't it? I shouldn't say that. Emily's super nervous, and she's about to fall apart, and this is really scary and terrible for her. No, she's fine. Here comes Emily. And Emily, if you could please, when you come out, introduce yourself, tell people who you are. You don't have to say what you do if you don't want. That's not who you are. Whatever you want to say, actually, Emily. And I'll be back in a minute. And Emily, thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Emily Tietzen. I'm a physical therapist, so this is completely out of my realm, and I'm also new to the area, so this is just me trying new things and getting involved in my new community. So this story is, it covers some, I'll just tell it. So I got home one day, and I walked in the door, and I said to my mom, there's a turtle in the yard. So we both went out, and we could see this little box turtle. She was on some earth and digging a hole, and my mom said, I think she's trying to lay her eggs. We should just give her some space. So we went in the house and had dinner, and our conversation turned to my Auntie T. Auntie T was my mom's sister. She had two boys, my cousins, and they were the same ages as my sister and I, so we spent a lot of time together. And Auntie T was an aide at the elementary school that we all attended, so she had the summers off with us, and summer slide was not going to happen on her watch. She took it upon herself to make sure our educations extended past the classroom. So every morning she'd come to our house, pad up our sidewalk in her bare feet, and pull us away from the couch and say, we're going out exploring today. So she'd take us out into the woods, and we'd listen for bird calls and pick blackberries and get all scratched up and dirty and sunburned and come home exhausted in the afternoon. She really loved turtles. I have a lot of memories of sitting in the back of her van pulled over on the side of the road while she dodged through traffic trying to help an angry snapping turtle across a busy road, hiding in the back with my sister and my cousins. One thing that she also loved to do was raise monarch butterflies. She read a magazine article about these butterflies that migrated from Mexico to the northern United States and Canada, laid their eggs, migrated back, and so soon we were all scouring the ditches for milkweed, which is what the butterflies lay their eggs on. And when we'd find just a plump black, yellow, and white striped caterpillar, we'd carefully take the milkweed plant, put it in a bucket, make a little habitat for it, put a few sticks in there. After a few days, the caterpillar would get bigger. It would crawl up the bucket into a J formation and hang itself, and soon it would be surrounded with a green jewel-like chrysalis. We'd wait a few more days, and pretty soon a bright orange monarch butterfly would emerge. And we'd try to say goodbye to them all. We'd wait for them to come out, flap their wings, dry off a little bit, and then they'd fly away. And we got really into this. Pretty soon, between her house and our house, we had probably like 15 monarch butterflies in different stages of metamorphoses going on. So those were our summers. We'd help turtles across the road. We'd listen to bird calls. We'd spend lots of time outside learning and having a good time until T got sick. So it was scary for us kids. We obviously didn't really know what was going on. but it was a lot of doctor's appointments, time in the hospital. We watched her grow weaker, lose her hair. So there wasn't much butterfly raising that summer when she was sick. She got out of the hospital a few times to sit on her porch and enjoy the fresh air, but other than that, not much. One day, my mom and I got home from visiting T. She was at her house, and we noticed something in our yard was different. We couldn't put our finger on it right away, but driving into the driveway, we just knew that something was off. And we figured it out. We looked at the tree line at the edge of our yard. There's this tree. It's usually just this ugly, old, scrubby-looking cherry tree, kind of like half dead looking. But today, it was completely covered, every square inch, with thousands of monarch butterflies. So we called we called her husband, and he brought her over, and my mom and him helped T to the edge of the yard, and she sat in a lawn chair, and we just sat and watched the butterflies. They had never been there before, and I will say they have never been there since. But we figured they were on their migration, I guess, back to Mexico at the end of the summer. 2 months after that, T passed away. So, back in our yard, checking on our turtle, who was, by the way, beneath this scrubby cherry tree that is still standing. The turtle was covering up her nest, her eggs, finishing her business. And we were just sitting there in the summer twilight, enjoying the air, and all of a sudden I heard my mom gasp. And I looked over, and she was staring at the ground, and there, in the middle of the yard, not 2 inches from the toe of her sandal, was a plump, black, yellow, and white striped caterpillar. So I went to the garage to get a bucket.
It's fantastic. Someone takes a journey. So real quick, I have a couple questions. So what do you do for a living again?
I am a physical therapist.
Okay, so what I want to ask you about that is, you just told that story, a very personal story. I mean, in a sense, is that do you feel therapy through that? Do you feel can you see that connecting with your patients or the people you work with, that you can incorporate story into that?
Oh, yeah. And part of what I pride myself as a healthcare professional, I guess, is I like to hear people's stories. Because yes, I'm dealing with the physical and your aches and pains and your bad knees and whatever, but when you really get to know someone, their past and what they really want to do with their lives or what they want to be able to do better, that's what helps me do what I do and get them better.
How did you find out about tonight?
Facebook.
Facebook?
Yeah.
So you heard their stories of grace, and you're like, oh my God, I want to talk about my aunt. I have this story. Yeah,
and when this happened, probably 2 summers ago, I think it was, my mom and I just couldn't believe it. It was just such a perfect reminder of T and her impact on our lives. So.
For me, I don't know how you guys feel, but for me, the idea of a dead tree covered in monarch butterflies, I get it. I get that's there. That doesn't go away for me. It's a powerful image. How do you feel about that image now? When you see that tree, is that tree still there?
That tree is still there. It's still not very pretty, but we can't get rid of it.
Right, of course.
But yeah, it's a good reminder, and it was just so beautiful. I mean, every square inch of the tree was covered. It had to be thousands and thousands of butterflies.
You know what storytellers and writers and poets and musicians, you know what they do? They notice the world around them while the rest of us are in a hurry. And you not only noticed it, but then you called your aunt so she could have that too. And I think we should, always think about that we have to observe. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Wow. That was interesting. I like that. It was good. You guys, another person over want to do a story? Who's ready next? How about Terry? You ready, Terry? It's Terry Ryan. I don't think Terry's nervous. It's good. I was telling my son, I told him he's 14. I do a lot of this stuff, and also I'm on the radio too. And he's like, "Don't you get nervous?" And I used to do a TV show for years for PBS, and I'm like, "Yeah, I get nervous every time." And he's like, "Oh my God, that's terrible." I'm like, "No, that's the best part. Because if you don't get nervous, you're not alive, right?" So those little things, if you avoid things that make you nervous and you don't have the butterflies in your stomach, then you're not alive. So it's good to be nervous. It's good to be scared. It's good to be on the edge. So anyway, let's hear your story. Thank you, sir.
Okay. The name of my story is Grade School Memories. And I have a unique memory where I can memorize and recall certain things in my life that other people can't believe I can remember. So they don't chase me around the school ground anymore. That's mainly because I have a bald spot. First grade, I remember a little bit about it. I had a teacher. I know her name was Miss Uminski. I can remember that. And people were talking. You're a kid and you hear things, and they were saying that her hair was so long she could probably clean herself with it. So I was 5 years old, and I repeated this to her face. And I ended up staying after class, and she had me write down these stories, write down these sentences. And I was trying to write, but I was really struggling, and I think I got the first sentence down, and I just started bawling. And that was it. That was good enough for her. So she let me go. I didn't have to write it 40 times. And then second grade, one of the incidents, I got in a little mischief. I was on the jungle gym in the back of the school, and I apparently spit down on a kid. And he went and told the teacher right away, and I was terrified, and I denied it, and totally denied it. I think the teacher saw me do it, so she brought me in the class, and I'd never been in so much trouble in my life. My excuse was I didn't want to admit I was doing it because I was scared, and I said, it accidentally fell out of my mouth. So going home, my parents heard I said that, but they knew right away that I did it. And I heard that story from my brothers for years after that. My alibi. They liked to make fun of me about that alibi. Third grade, Mrs. Short was her name. I was the shortest kid in the class, basically, and her name was Mrs. Short. Anyway, boy, third grade. That's a long time ago. Third grade, that's when I had a good friend. His dad was a doctor. He was a pediatrician. I lived like 5 houses down, and I thought he was really cool because he would let his kids swear. He would let his kids swear to him. And in my house, we were Catholics, and that was not acceptable. So I thought that was pretty cool. And they had 2 little basset hounds that would run, like just run across the floors, and I loved those 2 dogs. I can still remember the scratching sound on the floor when they would be running across the floor, and if you opened the door, they would go right for that door, and then they were gone, lost in the neighborhood, and you'd have to run out, chase them down, try and catch them. Fourth grade, let's see. Fourth grade, the teachers had kind of a reputation for being mean, very mean. And they were in a separate building from all the other grades. I remember there were chickens. They had live chickens in an incubator to teach us something scientific. And I just remember how scared I was looking in there like, I can't touch it because it'll die. I didn't want to have that reputation as a chick killer. So I stayed away from the chickens as much as I could. And 5th grade was probably my favorite year of school. Teacher's name was Mr. Ebenreiter. I still remember Tom Ebenreiter. For some reason, I can remember that. And he had a unique approach to teaching. He would he heard a lot of different mispronunciations of his name over the years. And I remember the first day, he was writing them down on the board, and one of them was like Evinrude. And I looked at that and I thought, wow, that's funny. How could they get it that wrong? It's just way off. So we got off to a good start, and he would make us sit down, and we would go around and we would read this book, Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And he would have us meditate in class, so that was kind of a different grade in a lot of other ways. And there was a pencil fighting stage we went through where one kid would hold the pencil. He would hold the pencil with both his hands, and the other one would pull up on his pencil and try and break it. And I thought I was kind of smart because I couldn't break it, so I'd bring my finger down and I would just break the pencil. And I think we went through hundreds of pencils, and I don't know how we got away with this, but we did. And so we moved on to 6th grade, and my teacher, I remember his name, he was very strict, very serious. His classroom had a somber tone, and kids once in a while got in fights, and he would basically get in your face, and if you got in a fight, and he would tell you, dumb. You know, he'd look right at you and go, dumb, and then he would look at the other kid and he'd go, stupid. And so it kind of deterred the kids, and I don't think anyone ever got in a fight ever again after being caught by him. And by the way, my mom was a teacher also. I was the 5th boy in a family of 6. I had a younger sister, and I paved the way for her to become the liberated woman that she is. Thank you.
Thank you. So, first, what do you do?
What do I do?
What do you do for a living?
I work in a warehouse.
You work in a warehouse. I'm curious, to me this is a story about memory, right? It's specific moments of memory, which, you know, for some of those memories quite a long time ago. What does memory mean to you?
What does memory mean to me?
Yeah, what does memory mean to you?
Jeez.
Sorry, that's a big one. And tell me the universe, what the universe is.
What I think about.
Yeah, I mean, to me, there are very specific moments of memory
Right,
that you chose
yes.
to tell. Like, what does it mean?
That's a good question. What I think about when I'm going through my day, when I have time to reflect, which is a lot of the time, even though I'm busy, I still tend to think a little bit about good things, hopefully.
And you choose, I mean, you chose to write this story, so you chose to write stories about very specific memories from a child. I don't think most of us remember. I have no idea who my teacher was in 3rd grade or 4th grade. I don't even know what city I lived in.
I'm sorry.
So, yeah, it's pretty bad.
Not good.
So, well, thank you very much. All right. So, I want to tell a story. You guys want to hear a story? Are we good? Are we all right? Is that breaking protocol? Chad, is that cool? I have to go get something right over here. It'll be fine. I'll be right back. Everybody relax. It's ready. So, I feel nervous. I feel nervous to tell a story because I've been like telling these guys on emails, and for the last couple hours, like how to tell a story. And I'm like, yeah, until I do not follow any of those rules at all, because I don't have to. No, hopefully I do. I don't know. We'll find out if I do or not. We'll see. So when I was 13 years old, I became a born-again Christian. And by the time I was 14, I had become a faith healer, if you can imagine that. Don't ask me afterwards. I can't do it anymore. And by the time I was 15, I was emancipated from my parents and moved to the Philippines, where I lived as a faith healer. And then by 16, I was in Haiti, where I was a preacher, started a church. And by 17, I was in China, where I was a Bible smuggler. That's a cool thing to have on your resume. I don't put it on my resume, but anyway, I was a Bible smuggler. By 18, I accepted a scholarship to a Christian school where I studied theology. And by 21, I was in seminary to be a minister. By 22, I had lost my mind. For years, I heard voices, and I thought those voices were God. And because I thought those voices were God, thus I joined the church and did all those things. But things got too far for me, and I ended up in a mental institution. They gave me lots of meds, and those meds took the voices away. And the latent function of my voices being gone was I was like, oh, I don't hear God anymore. And then I was like, oh, maybe I never did hear God. God and I broke up. I used to joke that we called each other on Christmas and Easter, but the relationship was over. And that's a bad joke, but we didn't call. And so there I was 23 years old. I was a virgin. I never had alcohol, didn't have drugs, didn't have caffeine. I'd never tried any of those things. I didn't watch TV. I was definitely a naive person, and I didn't know what to do. I was out of the mental institution. I was stable, and I no longer had anything to believe in, and so I did the only logical thing that a 23-year-old who was all those things would do, is I moved to Amsterdam, and that was a good move. And it was good. We're going to talk about that later. And I moved to Amsterdam, and when I got there, I did the things that Amsterdam provided. I got very involved with sleeping with prostitutes, doing hard drugs. I skipped beer and went right to ecstasy and acid, and just really partied really hard. Then I moved to Prague, and in Prague I discovered meth. I loved meth. I did meth for years, and I really partied hard then. Like, a lot of people say they partied hard, and I'm always like, no, you didn't. No, you didn't. I partied hard. And that's I was living in a squat, so I was basically homeless, partying my butt off, and times were, in retrospect, times were hard. I think at the time I thought it was free. And what happened one day was I was running this social cultural center, art center in Prague, and I was just weary. It's the only word I can use. And I had my head on my desk. I was like, tunk, and I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And it was a powerful moment because I think I was going to give up, like literally give up. I had recently OD'd, and that experience, which should have left me with an opportunity to say, dude, maybe you should change your lifestyle, left me instead of just bitter. So my life turned around. I didn't kill myself. I ended up getting married, and I moved to Madison, Wisconsin, and I worked for NPR, and all those good things happened, and 2 years ago I decided to write a book about my mental illness. And in writing the book, there's this moment, if anybody's written a book, there's this cool moment when you're done with the book. It's all ready to go. You've already proofread it, whatever. And they give you this glossary list. Basically, it's all the words in your book. You know, you have 82 times you said food and 16 times you said love or whatever. It was fun. You look through it. You're like, oh, like, you know, how many times did I say fuck? You know, it's kind of fun. And so I'm going through it, and at one point, which was a lot, so it's my book, right? I can do whatever I want. Though the people at NPR were like, the book was a little edgy. I was looking through all the words, and I came upon a word at the end of the list that was on there 7 times. And the word was grace. And I was like, what the hell? Well, now I get, the grace of Jesus. So a couple graces would make sense in the Jesus chapters of my book, right? I can live with that. But these graces were spread out equally over the entire book. And I'm like, what the hell? So I went through and found all the times in the book, and I read that paragraph where the grace was in it. I was like, holy crap, these were the turning points of my life. And I did not do that on purpose. And I would never use that word. It seemed like that's not the kind of word I would use. And I was like, whoa, you know? So I said to my publisher, look, man, I want to add something to the book. I just want to add one page to the book, which is a reflection on these times of grace. And he's like, go ahead, your book. So I'd like to read what I added to my book at the last second. Get rid of this sticky note. I remember one American expat, a young female painter and printmaker from Manhattan, who was using Prague's Social Cultural Center studios. One dreary winter evenings, when my weariness was so heavy that I laid my head on my desk just to lighten the load, she poked her head into my office and said, "You're coming with me." We walked to her studio flat, where she put on some chill jazz, and she drew me a bubble bath. While I sat in the tub, I enjoyed a cup of jasmine tea and her view of the city. She washed my nasty clothes and prepared a simple but elegant meal for me. When I was done bathing. After dinner, we talked for a bit before I fell asleep on her couch. I awoke in the morning with a blanket tucked around me and a note inviting me to enjoy some coffee and to lock the door when I left. I didn't know her. But her kindness was restorative, at least temporarily. Moments like these, little reminders of the grace of humanity, are vastly underestimated, if you ask me. These little moments, ones I had with the nuns in Oakland, the nurse in Haiti, that couple in Georgia who forgave me, these moments proclaim to us all that we are good. By simply caring for and trusting me, this woman drew the negative energy out of me like a poison. Often, during late nights fueled by too many drugs, one of these moments would help me pull back, I realized, to not do another line, to not put the needle in my arm, to not fucking give up. I also think moments like these prepared me for falling in love, because love only works when you are vulnerable, and you are vulnerable when you believe humanity is good and when you believe in the grace of each other. Thank you. There you go. It's kind of fun. It's a laugh a minute, that one. Do you want to come up and tell a story? You ready? Do your story? Yeah. Can I tell? Oh. This is fun. You having fun, Chad? Do you guys all know Chad? He's in charge of everything. He's a really good guy. Yeah, there you Chad. I have to make sure it's on.
Charles, your mentioning of the drug usage just astounds me. I grew up before that age came into being in the country. I still feel guilty once or twice a week taking an ibuprofen, and I wasn't even raised Catholic. It's kind of weird. Matt, follow up to your story. I remember about 25 years ago, maybe, there was a comedian from Downers Grove, Illinois, by the name of Emo Phillips. And he was, I don't know, does anybody remember Emo? He was kind of off the wall, but he had one story about how one day he was walking down the street and he found a billfold that had $150 in it. And he said, fortunately, there was identification there, not just a name and everything, and there was a phone number. And he said, I went to call the phone number, but he said, I got to thinking, how would I feel if I lost a billfold with $150 in it, and I decided I'd want to be taught a good lesson. So you could have been taught a good lesson there. I get nervous in front of a group like this. It's not a packed house, but would it be okay maybe if I just told my story this way? When I get nervous, sometimes I wet my pants, and it makes it worse. It was Valentine's Day back in 1933, less than a month after Herbert Hoover had left office and the new president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, had come into office. It was first grade in the community that eventually became my hometown. It was the Valentine's Day party, and one little first grade boy, knowing full well that he would get teased about it, went out after digging into his little piggy bank and bought a rather big Valentine, bigger than the Valentines the other kids were exchanging, and he gave it to a classmate who he had met the first day of school, and she caught his eye. On the front of the Valentine was a picture of all things. It was a goose, and the caption read, I know I may sound silly as a goose, but I love you, and it was signed Willard. You scroll ahead almost a dozen years. Willard graduated from high school over in Clintonville, and again it was still 15 months till the end of World War II. Nobody knew when it was going to end, so he enlisted right away, being patriotic. Enlisted in the Navy. He served upon at the USS Otis as a gunner's mate, and did a good enough job. They sent him to Gunner's School. After his 2 years, honorably discharged, he came back home, married, had 3 children. During his adult life, he only had 1 or 2 jobs. He was a steady worker. But he had a couple hobbies he really enjoyed. One was gardening. He got a big kick out of planting those seeds in the soil that he had tilled in the springtime and harvesting the food. He liked to hunt. He liked to fish. And of course, those 2 hobbies, or those 3 hobbies, helped him feed the family. And then later on in life, he took it upon himself to teach himself how to make wine. He became a community vintner. He made wines from the berries that he raised: blackberries, strawberries, raspberries, grapes, things like that. He loved to raise potatoes, and because of his potato raising, he got the nickname of Spud, which I suppose if your real name is Willard, isn't all that bad a nickname. So scroll ahead a way. After an absence of many years, 50 years, I moved to Wausau after living all over the country. And I would get back to my hometown a little bit more often. And one time when back there for unexpectedly, I didn't decide to go to this event till 10:30 in the morning, but I shot over there. I re-met a schoolmate of mine. I would have met her when she was in 2nd grade and I was in 3rd grade, and we were never romantically aligned even through high school, but we were friends. We were in 4-H together, student council officers and the like, and I met her at this occasion. Where would people my age re-meet again? It was not the internet. I have some standards. But, and it wasn't a class reunion. It wasn't a class reunion. It was, guess, a funeral, right? Because I go to a lot of funerals. We've kidded about that one. Turns out my friend is a good person and is a good seamstress. And now we get together. We don't cohabit on a permanent basis, but we travel together, have a good time. We've been to the Panama Canal on a cruise. 2010, we were in Athens, Istanbul, Island of Rhodes. This May, we did a couple weeks Alaska. It's been kind of nice. So I'm over there more often than she's here because of the fact that she's lived in that community almost her whole life, so she's tied into many more organizations than I'm tied into, so I go over there more often. One time I went over there on a Friday, and she said, "Oh, too bad you didn't get here sooner. You would have been able to meet Spud." Well, I never met Spud because Spud was like 12, 13 years older than me, but he came from a family of 8, and his kid brother was my age when I moved to Clintonville from the Chicago suburbs when I was in 3rd grade. He was in my class, so I knew these brothers by sight, but I didn't know them. So I never got to meet Spud. I said, "Well, what was Spud doing here?" And she said, "He came to pick up a pair of his pants." Well, that kind of raised an interesting question. I said, "Why is someone other than me leaving pants at your house?" And she said, "Well, simple solution." She said, "Spud's wife has, they're in their late 80s. Her eyesight has deteriorated, arthritic fingers, and she can't sew and mend anymore, so I do that for them. And there's a ritual there." She said, he comes, these things off, the trousers, he's shrunk, and so he needs his trousers recuffed. I do those, I do other sewing. And the ritual is this: he comes to pick up his things. He wants to pay me. I don't take anything from him, and so he keeps insisting. We go back and forth. Finally, he leaves, and then he returns anywhere from 15 minutes to half hour later, and he has like 2 bottles of his homemade wine, which is nice. So we call it even. Well, scroll ahead 2 years ago in October on Friday night, when I wasn't going over there, I called Rosalie, how was your day? And she said, oh, it was not fine. She said, Spud was here. He picked up some mending that I did for them, and I wouldn't take the $20. So again, he disappeared, and he was back no time at all. She said, boy, did we hit the jackpot. He has left 4 bottles of homemade wine, all different flavors. She said, neither one of us drink that much. She said, we'll have wine from here to eternity. Sunday, the phone rang late morning, and it was Rosalie, and I could tell something was wrong, and she said, you won't believe this, but at church today they announced that last night Spud took a nap and never woke up. He died last night, and as they say, you know, it was an easy death, but it sure hurts. Okay, one last scroll ahead. In August this year, one weekday, I called Rosalie. Again, I get the roundup of all her activities. She's a very busy person. She said, I went to Faye's funeral this morning. I said, oh, yes, I had heard she died. She said, it was a very uplifting celebration. She said, after all, Faye was 93 years old, and there were tears shed, but again, it was an upbeat funeral, as funerals go. She said they had the customary bulletin boards now with the pictures. She said the little black and white snapshots taken with the Kodak Brownie cameras in the 1930s, the 1940s, 1950s, and then that first generation of colored picture snapshots that are pretty faded by now, and many more of the better ones. She said, and yeah, those brought a smile to my face, but she said there was one item there that really, she said, I smiled, but then it turns out I wiped away a tear. And I said, what was that? She said, well, on the bulletin board, there was hung a picture frame, but it didn't have a picture in it. So what was in it? She said, it was a Valentine. It was a big Valentine. And oddly enough, she said it had a picture of a goose in it. And it caption said, I may sound silly as a goose, but I love you. And it was signed, of course, Willard. It was Valentine she had received in first grade 85 years ago. On Valentine's Day, it was less than a month since Herbert Hoover had left office, and less than a month, of course, since the new president, a guy who, like Willard, actually ended up getting a nickname, his being FDR. Thank you.
There you go. That's awesome. Thank you. So could you tell us about the walking stick?
Yeah, I mentioned the walking stick as a prop in our pre-session little get-together in the other room. There's all, that thing is at best an inch wide, but there's, if you're talking, there's all the security in the world. Just having that little object out there, it is really odd. You know, if I don't have it, it's not that I feel nude, but I like a podium, or I like something other than just a mic. There's a little story about this. I was down in Sarasota, Florida 5 years ago for an extended time for some medical treatment. And one day I was walking to the library, and I was approaching it with not this same stick, but a similar stick. And a very, very erudite gentleman comes walking my way. He looked like he was probably a retired Wall Street investor. And when we came abreast, he said, "Oh, what a wonderful, beautiful walking stick." And I said, well, thank you. I said, I not only carved it myself, but I actually grew it myself, a little tree farm I had. I said, I keep it mainly to fight off the young women. I thought I was being clever, and without wasting a second, he says, he said, I was wondering why it looked so new and unused.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah. I forgot I'm a retiree here. I moved to Wausau 15 years ago because of family illness, and we knew that the person wouldn't live more than a year or two, and I didn't plan on staying here, but then after she died, I liked Wausau so well that I never left.
So the stick looks a little more beat up now, though.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. Ashton, why don't you come on up? You got everybody doing good? Well, Ashton, would everybody stand up? Everybody stand up, if you don't mind. Oh, nice. That sounded good. That sounded churchy. Give it a little stretch. And shut your eyes for 1 second, and I'm going to throw a word at you, and I want you to think of the association I have with the word, okay? Or you don't know what the word's going to be, right? And the word is grace. Just what's your association with that? Cool. That's all I wanted to do. Thank you very much. Ashton, are you ready for story?
Sure.
All right. This is, and Ashton, please make sure also you mention what you do. Do you want? Are you going to take that off, or do you want me to lift that up? Oh, you got it. Okay. Thanks.
So you want me to introduce myself like everybody else? My name's Ashton. I go here at new and improved Wausau, UW Stevens Point. Kind of pointless transition, but it happens, so I have to deal with it. So yeah, I would like to say that I didn't really do a story about myself. So that's a little different. I didn't. If I knew everybody else was doing that, I might have done that, but I didn't. The story I'm actually doing was inspired by a TV show. It's gonna sound weird because the story itself isn't comedic, but it's a comedic TV show, Futurama. It's sort of inspired by that. So yeah, so Grace. There's this man who smells, and his name is Ben. Now, he smells, but it's not like, oh, that person smells, they don't take showers. No, he showers 2-3 times a day. He wears deodorant, maybe applies 2-3 times a day. He does everything in his power to weaken his smell. But the problem is he actually has a medical condition in which he just smells completely terrible. Like he has one of those smells where you walk, when somebody walks next to you, it just smells so bad. And it's like really bad. Like I've had moments where it's like, I don't want to judge, but I'm judging. And he has this issue with meeting people and finding friends and that sort of thing. And one of his sort of problems is he wants to find love. And he wants to be with somebody that he can spend the rest of his life with. And the issue is every time he finds a date, every time, finds somebody that's willing to go on a date with him and actually go out with him, they end up leaving early because they just can't stand his scent, his disgusting smell. And it kind of tears away at him. He can't handle all these people, putting him down and not being around him just because of the way he smells. It's something he can't help. Well, one day when he was, walking down the road, he smelled something actually really nice. And it was actually a flower shop that had just opened up. And he went inside. And there was a very pretty lady behind the desk, at the front. And he walked up to her and they started talking about it, and she was pretty excited about opening her store and everything like that. And they were talking and having a great conversation, and that's when he realized, wait a second, she hasn't pushed me away, or she hasn't maybe had a gross smell on her face yet. And that's when she mentions that she loves flowers, but she can't actually smell them because her nose doesn't work. She was born without the ability to smell. Immediately he heard that, he pounced on that. He asked her out on a date, and she was hesitant at first, but she said yes, and they went out on a date. A few more dates later, a few more dates. About a year later, they're in love. He's, the best place in his life. He's so happy that he found somebody. She's happy because she found somebody, and they're just a great model of a couple. Well, on a picnic one night, celebrating their year anniversary, she told him about how badly she wishes she could smell. And that's just something that sort of ate away at her in her life, and how badly she wants to be able to smell the flowers that she sells. How badly she wants to smell all the different, perfumes in the different stores, just everything. And, he just kind of listens and nods and agrees. And a week later, he actually found out that there was a surgery that could fix her nose and make it so she could smell. But now he was stuck with a decision. Tell her about it. Risk losing her. Or keep it from her and live the rest of his life in a lie. So he tells her, about the surgery, and she's so excited and so happy. And as a couple, they decide she's going to get the surgery. So they set it all up, and she gets the surgery. And so when he goes, to the recovery room and where she's at, resting, he brings a bouquet of flowers. And he walks in there and he hands them to her, and she immediately grabs them and just takes a big smell. And she says, "Oh, this is disgusting." And he's a bit confused, but as he walks, closer to her, she says, "Wait, I like the smell of you."
Is that's autobiographical? Is that?
It's definitely
Yeah, I
not
was gonna say.
autobiographical.
So for people who don't know, what is Futurama?
It's just like this animated TV show by Fox.
There you go. You mean cartoon? It's a cartoon.
It is cartoon.
Cartoon.
Yeah.
So what was the process? So you heard about this, you wanted to perform a story, you liked this one TV episode, because that seems complicated. Like, what was your
Okay,
process?
so
to this?
basically my English teacher told me about it. My English professor told me about it, and the story itself I'd already told to different people before because I had thought about it in the past. I don't honestly remember the first time I told it. I don't remember the purpose of the reason I told it in the first place. But
I'm trying to get the context of where you'd be like sitting around with some dudes or sitting in a bar and be like,
no.
oh, hey, that
Okay.
reminds me of this story of this guy that
okay,
smells.
I was talking to a friend. I remember one of the times I told her I was talking to a friend and she was like in a bad spot, and I told her the story in itself to sort of help her through that. And then in that sense, I thought about, I want to tell a story, and then I thought about why one of my favorite stories is that one of the only ones that I feel like I really enjoy telling and kind of has a lot of meaning to it.
That is so interesting. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wow. Could one of the lovely, I have a couple things I want to ask first. Someone tell me what time it is. See, that's the thing, it's a bad idea. It's like somebody called 911, but then nobody does because they think someone else did. So, oh, we got less time. Okay, don't worry about it. I was going to make a joke. She didn't let me. So could the most beautiful woman in the world tell me what? And then she was going to say that was a trick. It was too late. Now, it doesn't seem disingenuous now, right? Chad's like, it doesn't seem honest anymore, so I'm not going to say it. You have a story, right, that even though you're not set up for. Oh, you have a story? Hey, actually, I'll have you come up one second, but now we're gone through the folks who have like pre-registered and went through weeks of training before they did this. those people are done. But that doesn't mean you can't tell a story. Any of you in this room, like you could tell a story, for example, because wow, I'm really inspired to tell a story now, so I'm gonna tell a story. I'm not scared because these people can tell you that it's nervous for you to get up, but it's not that bad, right? They're like, man, it was easy. Like you were scared to death, and she like kicked it. You rocked. So, yeah, you're not. It's not hard at all. Tell the people they can do it. See, yeah, you could do it. So if you guys have a story, you can do it. And you have a story, right? And did you just make it up right now?
Yeah, I had no intention on even coming here today.
What's your name? Lexi, come on up. Come on down. You're the next contestant on Storytelling Night. Be Lexi. Don't be a not Lexi. This is exciting. And she's going to win, too. She'll have, like, the best story of the night. It's like, bam. Lexi, Lexi, who are you? Are you a professor of limnology at the university? What do you do?
I'm a full-time student here at UW Stevens Point now.
So you're not a limnology professor?
No.
Okay. I'm not either. Well, what's your story about? No, you know what? I won't ask you anything more. I'm going to go stay with Lexi. Thank you for coming. That takes a lot of guts to come up and do this for us, so thank you very much. So
Thank
here
you.
for one more time for Lexi.
Okay, well, my name's Lexi, and yeah, I had no intention on really even coming here tonight until about 7:30 when my friend Jeffrey Snapchatted me. He's like, hey, you still want to go to that, you want to go to the book festival storytelling thing? And I was like, sure, why not? Let's just go check it out. And yeah, I honestly didn't even know the definition of grace until I Googled it when I got here. So, but I guess my story is one that's near and dear to my heart. I mean, how do I follow up with a story about a 93-year-old love note. I mean, but yeah. So I would like to share a very personal story about why I'm still on this, or why I'm standing on this stage today. And I guess not really just why I'm standing here right now, but why I'm here, like a student at UW Stevens Point. So I want to back up to high school, probably about halfway through sophomore year. Looking at me as a high school student, people wouldn't know all the problems I struggled with. I was a decent student. I was really polite towards people. I had friends. I had a mom that cared about me very much. And I was an athlete, and I had a boyfriend and all that fun stuff. I was a staple of a high school student. But I struggled a lot. I had a lot of home issues. My dad he still currently is. He's a struggling alcoholic. He was really at the bottom, and he was basically verbally abusive towards me. And my parents had divorced when I was 9, so I was kind of on my own. And it was rough being 16 and not feeling like I didn't have a purpose in life. Like, how do you tell someone I don't have a purpose when my purpose hasn't even begun yet? But here I was, a sophomore in high school, and I felt like I had no reason to be on this earth anymore. And I was never a firm believer in God, and it's just not something that ever really clicked with me until this one particular day. It was actually the night of homecoming, and I had gotten all ready, and my dress was on, and my heels were on, and my hair was done, and my makeup was done, and I was ready to go out with my friends and, blow away all life's problems for an evening and just have a good time with my friends. But then my friend gives me a call, and she's telling me about this rabbit that was abandoned in a hutch and was essentially dying. And well, I suppose she told me about it earlier, and I was like, oh, that's crazy. But she called me that day and was like, I think this rabbit died. And I was worried about it because I'm an animal lover. So I just stopped, and I was like, no, I want to go see this rabbit. What made me decide to go look at that rabbit? I don't know. And to this day, I still don't know. And here we are 2 years later. But anyways, so I got in my car, still dressed in heels, and I went out to this farm that was way out in Merrill, and I drove up to this hutch where she told me it was, and it was abandoned. Like, I don't really know how she was like, I don't even know how she knew there was a rabbit. And I was like, she's like, don't go there, it's gonna be dead and it's just gonna be really sad. But I went up to that hutch anyways, and there was no rabbit outside, and I pulled back the cover, and there was just this tiny, near lifeless little creature laying in filth and hay. And I stood there for a moment looking at it, and I'm like, it's dead, like this thing's not alive. But I saw him take a little breath, and I knew instantly then I had to help him. And so I picked him up out of the hutch, and I laid him on the grass, not knowing what to do. I was just kind of in shock at this creature and what kind of condition he was in. I mean, he was the ugliest thing I've ever seen in my life. So I laid him in the grass, and he just flopped over. He couldn't sit up. He just breathed, and I wasn't sure what to do. I wasn't sure if I should have just left him there or if I should have taken him to a vet. He was a domesticated rabbit, I might add. And then I saw him, nibble at this little blade of grass, and that's kind of when I knew that he was fighting for his life, essentially. So I scooped him up, put him in the front seat of my car, took him back to my house, and might I add, this is just hours before I was supposed to leave for dinner. And I got a syringe, syringe fed him water, I gave him hay, I gave him anything I could think of. I didn't have a rabbit, so I didn't know what they really ate. I did the stereotypical carrots and lettuce. So, and there he was, just flopped on his side, totally a vegetable. He couldn't do anything for himself. And, I thought, you know what? I'm just going to give this rabbit a comfortable place to die. And he's going to, go peacefully in a warm, safe, clean place. So I got him cleaned up, and I got him all set, and I was like, Mom, can you just keep an eye on him? If he dies, just text me. So I went to the homecoming dance, and I came home, and here he was, alive, still breathing. And I couldn't just give up on this animal. And me being 15, I didn't have the income to take him to the vet, and my mom didn't really want to do that. So I stayed up with him every night for a week. Every 2 hours, I would syringe feed him and hand feed him pellets that I had purchased at Walmart, just a little bag. And I would swaddle him, and I gave him a heating pad and a sweater. And one day, I will never get this day out of my head. I was sitting in the living room with him one day after school and, giving him his water, and I sat him up, and he just stood up. Like, he just sat up like a normal rabbit. I mean, he was still a little wobbly, but, that's how life goes. And eventually he started hopping around. And, that was amazing for me. That was just a magical moment. I put so many hours of work into this rabbit, and he finally started to respond and, show signs that he was fighting and he wanted to live. I had this rabbit for about a month, I think, before he had a stroke, and we did take him to the vet to be put down. And I think about it a lot because, this rabbit, he was at the bottom. He had hit rock bottom in his life. And so we kind of felt the same. But he just kept going, and he kept fighting, even though, he had one eye swollen shut and he couldn't stand or even lift his head on his own. And he made it through. And, even though he ended up not making it, it gave me hope. And not only did it give me hope, it made me realize what I wanted to do with my life. And I realized that I wanted to dedicate my life to helping animals and saving animals. So like I said, I don't believe in God that much, but this little pound creature basically saved my life. He gave me a reason to be here. He gave me a purpose. And I knew that I had to continue with that purpose and help all the other rabbits and dogs and cats that might be in the same type of situation like him. So I decided, I was like, this is it. This is what I was put on earth for. This is what I'm here for. And so I, pushed my way through high school, and I applied to college to to hopefully pursue a veterinary career. And I still think about it to this day, 2 years later, that this little pound creature we both gave each other purpose. I saved him, and he saved me, and I think that is the true definition of grace. Thank you.
Damn. No, seriously. You just came up and told that story. I don't know. I think it's impressive. So what was the rabbit's name?
His name was Buckley.
Buckley?
Yes.
And that's a powerful story. I didn't know where that was going, and I think that's very powerful. And it's very honest. Did you think about grace? How do you define grace? I mean, how do you think about grace when you use that word?
Well, I never really heard the word outside of the song Amazing Grace. Mm-hmm. So I didn't really know a definition. And then, that was when you told us to stand up and picture an association, I pictured Buckley.
Right.
He was my saving grace, and I was essentially his saving grace. And it's crazy, but yeah, I Googled the definition, and the definition is a blessing, and it's true, that rabbit was a blessing to me.
You know, it's funny, while you were talking, I also Googled the definition of it. Let me read it. There are 3 definitions of it, but in my mind, I always think of grace as undeserved love, reciprocal or not. I like your story because it's reciprocal, but since you did that, it's funny, they actually looked it up. So here's what the Google machine says. Grace is three definitions of grace. Simple elegance of refinement of movement, the free and unmerited favor of God that is manifested in the salvation of sinners, that's bestowed as a blessing. And lastly, to do honor or credit to something or someone by your own presence. To do honor or credit to someone or something by your own presence. That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And that's the other thing about this story is you will remember the rabbit. Like at some point later, I'm gonna remember the rabbit. I probably won't remember the rabbit's name. I probably won't remember the story, but I'm gonna remember the rabbit. Then the rabbit is gonna take my mind, and I'm gonna remember the story, and I'm gonna remember the rabbit. That's important. So the act of grace that you two had with each other now is spread out. You know what I mean? Because you shared your story of a rabbit.
Yeah.
That's an important story.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. God, the definition's incredible of grace. What a great word. Great word. Maybe another story of grace would be fantastic if you'd like to come up. So I think having only one person so far inspired by standing with your eyes shut is not good enough. So if somebody else has a story, you are certainly welcome to share your story about grace. You have one? And you have, oh my gosh. Boom, boom, boom. Three stories. Here, down, story, go. Okay, I will go back. We will get all 3 of you up here, and we'll keep doing some stories till we run out of time. You ready to tell a story? Well, I'll bring them up one at a time. So please tell us who you are. I think we have a lot of English. How many English professors do we have in the room? That's it? Only 4 are English teachers? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You know what Garrison Keillor said about English majors, right?
Do we want fries with that?
No, he said that's why public radio was invented. It was just to give jobs to people with English majors.
That's much kinder.
That's much kinder. Yeah, I don't want fries. Can I have some fries afterwards? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Please tell everyone who you are. Obviously, you're an English professor, but we already gave that away. But tell everybody about yourself, and we're going to hear a story. This is a good story. I like this story, too.
Hi, my name's Jill Stukenberg. The first time I drove the car, it wasn't my car to drive. It belonged to my aunt, and she was dying in the back seat. She had cancer that summer, and it was my turn in the family to drive her to her chemo appointment in Green Bay. She died later that summer, and my uncle asked if I wanted to buy the car. He had a discount price in mind, a family discount, although later I found out that he just really couldn't get blue brick price for it anyway, because he said my aunt had been in a car crash with a deer a year or 2 ago, and the car had been wrecked pretty badly and then fixed up. So I got the family discount on the car that couldn't be sold. But I think also my uncle wanted me to have the car because he had this idea that because something so terrible had happened to my aunt in it, the crash with the deer, that I would somehow be spared. The car would protect me. So I was a teenager, and this was the late 90s, so I gave the car a flowery girl's name. I named it Grace. And I drove Grace off to college, where I did many ungraceful things promptly. I drove Grace into a parking lot pillar. I was arrested tailgating out of the back of Grace. I once lost Grace for 3 days in a snowstorm because I had forgotten where I parked her, and the plow plowed all the snow over the top. And when I finally found Grace, I had to peel the parking tickets off one by one and defrost them in my roommate's microwave. I moved to New Mexico next after I graduated from college, where a vandal snapped the antenna off Grace. And a boy who later broke my heart explained to me that the antenna was probably used to smoke crack cocaine. by the time I left New Mexico, the top of my car was baked white, which was something that now I know is the sign of a car that's been driven in the Southwest. And when I see a car anywhere now that has that white on the top, I know that's somebody who just came from the Southwest. I moved to Portland, Oregon next, where I lived with another boyfriend. And I taught part-time at community colleges, so I drove Grace back and forth between different community colleges and sometimes sat in the parking lot and graded papers in the car with Grace. And one day, a woman hit us in an intersection. And she got out of her car, and she cried and said she didn't have any insurance, and what was she gonna do? And I said, you know what? Let's not worry about that. And so Grace and I drove off, and I drove Grace around with an entirely crumpled front end until she was stolen. Grace was stolen from in front of my apartment building, and I didn't see her for 3 months. And at the end of 3 months, the police called me and said, we have your car, it's impounded, come pick it up. And all that time, Grace had been parked 16 blocks away from my apartment. The night that she went missing was a very cold night, and one of the police officers speculated to me that it was probably a homeless person who had swiped her just for a place to sleep for the night. Grace and I moved to Illinois for my first full-time teaching job, where I taught for 9 months before, because of state budget cuts, I was laid off. Luckily, I moved to Wisconsin in 2010. And here in Wisconsin, I drove the car for a few more years. It finally died in my driveway at the house where I still live, just a couple of blocks here from campus. I was pregnant when the wrecker came and took Grace away, and I definitely thought it was a sign of the end of my youth. But now I think it was more of a sign of how all the moments of our life accrue and become grace. All the moments that we are spared, and even more so, all the moments from which we are not.
Why do we name, why do America, I think it's a thing, why do Americans name their cars? I had friends that lived in Europe for 10 years, and they were like, a bunch of stuff they couldn't figure out about us. But they're like, why do you name your cars? I'm like, I don't know why.
I don't know why either, and I thought, was it just a white girl 90s thing? But then I told my mom about it, and my mom said, oh, I named my car back in the 70s. And I thought, well, it's been going on for longer.
Everybody named their car?
A name for your car? Like a human name, like it's a pet or something? It's a very weird...
Yeah, so everybody has a name for their car. Strange. And so
Thanks.
You named your car Grace, though. That's got a little edge to that, a little something going on there.
Yeah, maybe I was smarter than I knew.
Yeah, maybe you were smarter than you knew. But it's deeper, though, when Grace goes away. That's kind of heavy, too. It's like, shit.
Yeah.
It's not just a loss of innocence. It's you don't have Grace anymore.
Right.
Do you feel like you've lost Grace in your life?
I think that there were a lot of, when I tell the story or when I put all those pieces of the story together, I don't usually think that I've had a hard life. I'm incredibly lucky, and I thought, man, this story sort of paints it, just the way I was hitting certain things. I was like, oh, that's not really, I don't know if I'd tell my life story that way on any day, but it was weird when I put it with the metaphor of the car and all the things that happened to that car, then it did come out that way.
I think it sounds interesting, actually. I think it's interesting to look at your life that way.
It was an amazing car. It was a 92 Honda Accord, just for...
Wow,
Yeah.
Grace. Well, thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. All right, so real quick, because I don't remember at all who raised their hands. Oh, I remember you. I even know you. That's easy. That I remember. 1, 2, 3, 4 people. Couple things. I'm going to go through the rules here. Rules. I love that. We're going to go through the rules because I'm a rule kind of guy. I love rules. I'm a terrible father, actually. I have 2 kids. I'm not. Because they know who to talk to, right? If you talk to mom, you're going to get the discipline, right? You talk to me, I'm like, yeah, stay up. Eat Cheetos. I really don't, I'm a bit of a softie. So we try to keep the stories to 3 to 5 minutes. They're supposed to be about grace, and what's the other one? Oh, they have to be awesome. So those are the 3 rules. Since you're sitting right here, you get to go first. So 3 to 5, grace, awesome. You could tell a story about being awesome gracefully, I guess. I think that would be... Chad's like, that's cool. You okay, Chad? You a hug? You're literally alone. Right? It's like an image of Chad, alone in the world. So what's your name, sir?
Patrick.
Patrick. That's my father's name. That's cool. I like my dad. And so, Patrick, what do you do for a living? Or maybe you don't work. That's fine, too.
Oh, I do. I'm a financial advisor.
Oh, man, we should talk. We should talk. I'm thinking about refinancing my house. I don't know what to do, but we'll talk about it later.
And I happen to be on the this campus's foundation board.
Oh, thank you. Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that. You got applause. Well, I'm going to let you tell your story and have fun.
Thank you. You know, I can't believe I'm here. My wife asked me if I wanted to come to this event at about 4:30 or 5 o'clock, and I tried to find out what this was all about. It seemed kind of interesting, and I mean, to even come to the event is one thing, but me standing up here, and now that I see some familiar faces, I'm really getting nervous. But Lexi, I want to tell you something. That rabbit was God talking to you. I had God talk to me 3 times in my life, and I'd like to tell you about them. So the first one was I was in Vail skiing with my brother. We were having a great time. We get off the chairlift, and he had some equipment trouble, so I skied up to the top of the hill, and I'm overlooking this just gorgeous mountain range. It's just beautiful. I'd never seen anything so vast and big. And all of a sudden, I heard a voice, like from over here, say, "Stay beautiful and be diplomatic." And I turned around, and there wasn't anybody within 25, 30 yards from me. I had no idea where that came from. But it's something that I've remembered. That happened to be in, almost 30 years ago that happened. And then the second time that it happened, my family went on a bike hike from Wausau to Bass Lake, which is about 20 miles north of Antigo. And I invited my girlfriend of 6 months at the time. And so we're just pedaling along on our way to Bass Lake. And we're on a country road. We've got cornfields on this side, potato fields on this side, and we're all biking single file. And all of a sudden, I hear from my right side from the potato field a voice say, "Ask her now." There wasn't anybody for 15 yards ahead of me. I turned around and there wasn't anybody 10, 15 yards behind me. And I remember nothing from the rest of that bike ride except, should I ask her to marry me? Now, I don't recall how we got from Bass Lake back to Wausau, but we're at my girlfriend and we're at my house, and she's in my den living room reading the Sunday paper, and I'm at the kitchen table, and I am just trying to figure out, should I ask her now? So I have a pad of paper, and I pretend like I'm doing something, and she says, "Patrick, what are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just trying to figure something out." So she goes to read the paper, and then a little while later, I sat down on the couch next to her. So I'm here, and she's here, she's reading the paper, and I said, "Do you think you'd be happy married to me?" She says, "What did you say?" I said, "Well, do you think you'd be happy married to me?" She said, "Well, of course I would." I said, "Well, then why don't we get married?" And she's right there. And then the third time that God spoke to me, I was giving the eulogy at my father's funeral. So I'm on the altar, and I'm looking out over the congregation, and I'm not a public speaker by any means, and I get to I'm at the lectern in church, and my knees just start shaking when I see everybody in the congregation. And there's 2 altar boy chairs right to my right that are empty, and all of a sudden, I heard in my father's voice say, "It's okay, you can go now." And all of a sudden, a calmness just went right over my body. And then I delivered the eulogy. So Lexi, that was that rabbit. That was God talking to you through that rabbit. Thank you.
Wow. So again, I just want to throw out that you just came up here and just did that.
I did.
In less than 5 minutes, and it was all, it's interesting.
Well, it took 3 elbow jabs from my wife.
Only 3?
You should do it.
So I have a couple questions for you. Why though? I mean, if you wrote those, I was thinking about it, if you wrote those words out, you know, just with all those words were out in one line, why those words? Why do you think those words? I mean, those aren't those aren't burning bush words. Do you know what I mean? Those aren't the words that normally people say when God's talking to them. Why do you think it's those words?
I have no idea.
That's a pretty good answer, though. But you must have thought about it.
I must have what?
You must have thought about it. I mean, that's pretty powerful stuff.
Well, I understand the ask her now. I get that one.
Yeah.
You know, but the other two? I mean, I kind of understand my father saying, it's okay, you can go now. I get that one. The stay beautiful, be diplomatic, I don't know.
It's good advice, though. Actually,
It is.
It's solid advice.
Good advice. Mm-hmm.
So you're a young man. You're not 80 years old. It's very likely, I would assume, if you've heard this 3 times, that it's going to happen again, right? I mean,
Probably.
Do you think about it?
Mm-hmm.
How do you? Is it a think like you look forward to it, or how do you think about it when?
Well, it's kind of ironic. All of those events happened 25 to 30 years ago. So, I mean, I hope it happens again.
You're due.
Sure. Why not?
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Okay.
Thanks. All right. Come on up. How are you today? Oh, great. It's good to be great. It's great to be good. Is everybody having a good time? You know, grace is a heavy... Huh? I'm having a great time. You know, grace it can be... Like I think we were worried about it. We were discussing the theme. It's kind of heavy. But it's not all... Like people, it may be heavy, but I think it's got a lift to it at the end. Grace has meaning, you know? It has meaning that the Valentine's comes back around. That's what it's about. How are you today?
I'm great.
I remember you from last year. How are you?
This is not as shocking as that.
That's okay. You can be shocking. I like shocking. I'm a big fan. But why don't you? Well, first, what's your name?
Connie,
Hi, Connie.
Hi.
So what do you do in this lovely world?
I am retired. I retired in May. I taught here for 16 years.
But when people say they're retired, what do you do?
I write.
You write. What are you writing?
Oh, lots of different things. I'm finishing a book on the St. Louis Cardinals baseball stadiums. And I'm writing a chapter in a book called Manifesting Your Dreams. And I am writing a book on the part of the story that I'm going to tell this evening.
You're writing 3 books right now?
Yeah.
That's not retired. You're working hard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I have the time now to do it. And
Yeah, I was going to say, if I had a dime for every woman I knew in Wausau writing a book about St. Louis Cardinal things, I'd be a rich man. So let's hear your story. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Actually, grace to me is quite easy to talk about because I walk in grace and I walk in grace every single day. I was trained as a Catholic. I grew up as a Catholic. I do not follow the religion anymore, but I am a very spiritual person. And consequently, I too have heard God talk to me. I've heard God laugh. I've heard God cry. And I wouldn't be able to walk my journey without the belief that I have. I find grace every time I try to do something different, something scary. When I got married, I felt God there with grace. When I got divorced, I felt God there with grace. When I moved to Cincinnati at age 50 to go to graduate school, not knowing a soul, I felt grace with God. When I moved up here to Wausau at age 58 and not knowing anyone, the grace of God brought me here. But the story I'm going to tell you about tonight is just how God is there at all times. At age 19, my son had a very severe car accident, and he was in a coma for 3.5 months. He was away at an out-of-town hospital 3 hours from my house for a year, and I would go down there on Fridays through Monday and watch his treatments and help to take care of him. When he woke up from the coma, he had a traumatic brain injury. He was 19 years old. And as scary as it was, my deal was he's alive. And so we continued that journey. One Sunday, I was down at Mount Vernon, Missouri, where he was at the hospital. And the nurse said to me, "Why don't you get him and take him for a walk around the campus?" She said, "It's a beautiful day, let's get him out." And I said, "Okay." So we're walking around the campus. He's in civilian clothes. He's not in a hospital gown. He's walking with a cane that day. And we're walking around. He's 19. He loved filthy rap. Really loved Tupac Shakur. I can't stand that stuff. We're walking along, and he started out loud with other people on the campus walking. He started singing something from Tupac. And I'm embarrassed, and I'm like, but I looked right at him, and I start singing on Eagle's Wings. I thought, I'm just going to show him. Didn't stop him at all. And I thought, okay, how do I get him to stop? So I said, okay, I'm going to sing Sinatra. He loves Sinatra. He'll sing Sinatra with me. No, he looked at me and he smiled. He quit singing Tupac and started singing a song by Carly Simon called "You're the Love of My Life." And I was so mad when he did that. I looked at him and I said, "What is the matter with you? Why do you even know that song?" And he looked at me and he kept singing, and I said, "Michael, stop right now. How do you know that song?" He said, "You sang it to me every day." I said, "No, I didn't." I said, "I didn't learn that song till I moved to Cincinnati away from my family, my children." And I said, I played that song over and over and over again every Sunday when I had to do my writing. But I said, "I never sang that song to you." And he just smiled and he looked at me and he said, "Yes, you did." He said, "You sang it to me every day when I was in the coma." And he was right. I would go to lunch and I would come back. He was in what they call a waking coma, which meant his eyes are wide awake. Even when he slept, his eyes were wide awake. And he would sit up and lay down and sit up and lay down, and they had him strapped in the bed. So I would come in after lunch, I'd put the side of the bed down, and I'd get him in to me, and I would rock him. And I would sing, "You're the love of my life. From the moment I first met you, from the first day you were born, I knew you're the love of my life." And he is. And he learned that song through the grace of God, even in the coma. So to me, grace is everywhere, and it's in all of our lives. We just have to look for it. Thank you.
I don't know about you guys, but I'd like to hear the song. I don't agree on the spot.
Well.
It's okay. If you don't mind, I mean, I don't have any question. I would really like to. I think a lot of people would like to, just part of it, or at least the chorus. Like if we could hear it, I would like. I don't know it at all. Like I never.
It's "You're the love of my life. You are the love of my life. From the moment I first saw you, the second that you were born, I knew you're the love of my life. You are the love of my life."
Thank you. Wow. Good luck following up with that. Who wants to go next? Come on up, sir. I think I'm going to buy a Carly Simon record now. You know, every so often I'm reminded of something that I already know, and this was a reminder that life is beautiful. You know, life is beautiful. I was gonna have you rap the Tupac song he did, but I didn't. That would be unfair. How are you, sir?
Good.
So what is your name?
Jaeger?
Jaeger?
Yeah.
That's an excellent name. Sorry, I'm not judging anyone else's name, but I like that name. So what do you do, sir?
I'm the Poet Laureate of Montana.
You're the Poet Laureate of Montana?
Next year, I'll be the Emperor of Wyoming.
What do you think, if you had to choose, what would be better to be? The Poet Laureate of Montana or the Emperor of Wyoming? Think about it. It's a big think about it. It's a big choice.
I love Montana. I'm from Montana. Yeah.
Well, let's hear your story.
Okay, so I haven't lived in Wausau for about going on 50 years. And actually, I went to school next door. And, at the time we called it UWMC. And they called it, University of Wisconsin Marathon County Extension. And so for short, we called it, where are you going to school? Well, I'm going to the Extension. And if you really love the place, you called it the Stench. Right? Where do you go to school? I go to Stench, right? There's a term of endearment. But my story is this, I'll title it, They Lifted Me Up, 3 teachers. They lifted me up, that's the noise a colon makes. 3 teachers. And this is a Wausau story, so it's 3 Wausau teachers. So it starts when I'm in 8th grade at John Muir Junior High. First year John Muir opened up. I was just telling my wife today, the first year John Muir opened up, we didn't have gym class. They just sent us outside. We picked rocks in the field, and we cleared that field. That is now the football field in the gym area there, So all of us little 7th and 8th graders out there hauling rocks. Some of us went to prison later, and we were ready, So I'm at John Muir Junior High School, and I'm a 13, 14-year-old kid in 8th grade English class. And, I'm pretty unruly little kid, full of hormones and everything. And I've got this English teacher named Bernadine Tomasic, Miss Tomasic. And she, out of desperation, had taken my desk and moved it facing the opposite way of everybody else in class. So everybody else is facing this way, and they're studying Hawthorne's Evangeline, and I'm facing the wall in the back, happily scribbling in my notebook, writing bawdy parodies of Beatles songs, right? You can imagine what you do with a song like I Want to Hold Your Hand. And Miss Tomasic saw that, again, I wasn't paying attention, so she came back to where I was working there. And they used to wear high heel shoes, way back then. Teachers would wear high heel shoes and get all fancied up and everything. And so I heard click, 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 click. And she comes up behind me, and I think, oh my God, she's going to embarrass me. She picks up my notebook, and she's reading what I've written, and all of a sudden she puts it down in front of me again. She puts her hand on my shoulder, and she says, a budding poet. So immediately I fell in love. And I brought to her everything I ever wrote ever after, even through high school and into college. And after my first book came out in 1988, I got a little card in the mail, and she was living in Florida at that time. And I opened it up, and it just said, "I'm proud of you." And I thought that was the best thing that anybody had ever said about anything I'd ever written. It was just really filled me with joy. And I saw that as a teacher, she had a moment where she could have put me down, but instead she lifted me up. So fast forward to high school. Now I'm in the last class. Wausau had one high school until 1969. That was when I graduated. And then the new high school was built in the west here. So we had one high school. And I had the same homeroom teacher for 3 years. He was a math teacher, and I shamefully can't remember his name. For 3 years I sat in that homeroom, and I can't remember his name. But he taught math. Basically, I can't count. And so I didn't think I counted to him either, right? And finally, my senior year in high school, the war in Vietnam is on. And I'm like really depressed because after I graduated, I think, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to get drafted. I'm going to go to Vietnam. I'm going to die. And so it was really difficult to concentrate in school. And I get him, my homeroom teacher, as my math teacher that year. But I'm just so, it's like a bad time for me, and so I'm not paying attention, I'm not listening, I don't know what's going on, and it's test day, and he gives me the test, and he sets it out in front of us, and I don't even understand the questions, let alone figure out how to get the answers, so I just sort of sat there in a kind of stupor, looking forward, and I heard him get up from his desk and start walking towards me. And as he's walking towards me, I put my shoulders like this because I thought, he's going to hit me. Now, I don't know why I thought that because no teacher ever hit me, right? But, that's just the goofiness you get into. He's going to hit me. Well, he came and he took my paper, and I hear him go back to his desk and hear him tear up my test. And he sits down, and a little bit later, he gets back up. And this time he starts walking towards me. I go, oh, he's going to hit me this time. Here it comes. He's going to hit me, And instead, he sets down in front of me the first Atlantic monthly magazine I've ever known. And there's an article there in the poet E.E. Cummings. And he said, here, you read this, you can understand it. I can't. That's a Wausau teacher. And there, again, I saw that he had a moment where he could have put me down, but instead he lifted me up. So fast forward a little bit, I became an expat. I went to Sweden instead of being drafted. And when I came home, I went to the Stench. And at the Stench, there was this wonderful psychology professor, Dr. Byron Barrington. And I took every class I could take from Barrington. He's this little guy who had this wonderful classroom technique of, we'd sit around in a little seminar table, made us feel important. And he would ask us questions like, he'd just look at us and he'd go, why do people hate? And everybody would be quiet. And I've always been a sort of gabby, nervous person. And so I'd start talking, right? And I'd start getting the conversation going. And I really enjoyed that class. And I loved his teaching style. Well, one day after class, you got to understand at this time, it seems really kind of weird now, but we could smoke in class, right? Can't do that now, but back then you could smoke in class. I love to tell the story that in one of our classes, my older brother decided he wanted to have a cigarette, but he didn't have an ashtray, so he made one out of paper. And the professor finally had to say, Daryl, I think you got a problem there. But we're sitting in the hallway. We're smoking cigarettes. We got our legs out like that. And here comes Dr. Barrington. He's got a load of papers in his arms. And he kind of sort of trips over my leg a little bit. And I thought, oh, I hate that because I like this guy. Now he thinks I'm a real jerk, because I just tripped him up, And so he kind of recovers and he turns around and he looks at me and he says, you, young man, should be a teacher. Honest God, until that time, I never even thought of graduating from college. I was sort of taking classes, but I didn't know how you finished the whole program, And that day I went and I got a college catalog and I started, figuring out how to get somewhere with all this, right? So take those three teachers who, Dr. Barrington again, had a moment where he could have put me down, but instead he lifted me up. So take those three teachers, and now fast forward, I become an English professor myself. And I've been teaching 35 years now at a little college in Montana. And at about year 20, I went through, what they call job burnout, where I found myself kind of robotically going to class, reciting what I had to recite, and robotically turning around, going back to my office, closing the door and sort of slumping in my desk, and just sort of feeling terrible about it. And I thought, how am I ever gonna do better? And I thought of my 3 teachers, how when they had a chance to put me down, they lifted me up. And once again, they lifted me up because they made me realize if I wanted to pull myself out of that slump, what I would do is every day, I'd say a little prayer, I'd say, show me the way, and I'd say, let me find one person I can do one small thing for, like those people did for me. And so every day I walked out to the campus where I was teaching, and I watched for that moment when someone would come to me, and I thought, is this going to happen? But it started happening every day. Somebody would come to me, and they'd have what I used to see as a kind of cockamamie story and excuses of why they didn't do what they needed to do, etc. And now I saw that as my opportunity to lift them up. And so they'd come to me, and they'd say things like, well, I need some more time to do what I need to do, but to get my assignment done. I haven't got it done. I had this excuse or that excuse. And all I said was, yes, okay, great. I'm cheering for you. It was my opportunity, instead of putting them down for the failure they were already feeling, to lift them up. And so this is all about grace. Those 3 WASA teachers changed my life in a huge way. And I hope then what I do is I pass it along to all these other kids that I get in class, just little, by small acts, one at a time, as often as I can find the opportunity to do it. That's it. Thank you.
What a fitting final story. Thank you. So there's a moment in that story you were talking about 3 teachers, and I'm like, I hope he became a teacher. I hope he became a teacher. So it was exciting that you became a teacher. Are you here just for this festival? Are you?
Yeah. He made me.
That was my next question. So you're going to read some poetry at 3:30 on Saturday?
Mm-hmm.
3:30 on Saturday. That's a great, huh? 3:30 on Saturday at the library. So I think now, thank you very much. So I think now we have to do, are we going to do who won the story? Right, okay. Ooh, a PowerPoint, that's exciting. Good job. Yes. Oh yes, I'm teaching a podcasting workshop tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. It is not full, which is shocking. Oh, it's free? Really? That's why I'm not getting paid. No, you should come. I'm gonna teach a whole course on how to make your own podcast. I have it all prepared. I'm definitely very practical. It's all about how to sit down and make your own podcast. You can get it published and get out there and how to do it. It's very exciting, and I will be helping people in the group afterwards to get things published if they need to. So it's very practical. Yes, ma'am. No. Here's how you register. Bring me a donut. Yes. Actually, I don't need sweets. Bring me something. Bring me a piece of steak would be great. No, you don't have to bring me anything. You can bring me something, actually. How long do you anticipate it being? It's 90 minutes. But if you are serious about wanting to make a podcast at all, come to this. Obviously, it's what I do for a living at NPR, but I've thought a lot about how to put it together. So you're all very welcome to do this. And not only like some of the philosophical stuff, but it's mostly meant to be very practical. Like, how can you sit down and make your own? Because you can, right? There's a lot of 12-year-olds making them, and they suck. So you can make yours, I promise. Was that unfair to 12-year-olds? I have a 12-year-old. She wants to make her own podcast. I'm sure it will suck. Oh, I can't even see that, but I have a funny feeling that has people's names and their story next to it. Is this on? Oh, it is on. Yeah, you guys who were in it can't vote. Poopy heads, don't do that. You know, there's like the heavy metal thing, the heavy metal guys, but it's not high enough. Like, whoa, but it doesn't work at all. Yes, ma'am. Can you only vote for one? No, do it. You know what? We're gonna be anarchists here. You can do whatever you want. Don't be a jerk about it, though. But yeah, you can vote for more than one. The hell, why not? There are prizes. Vanna, where's Vanna? I'm just joking. Her name's not Vanna. But there are prizes, including a tote bag of my radio program, which is very exciting. I made that tote bag myself with recycled plastic I found on a sea turtle. Yeah, what else is in the bag? Oh my God, Vanna, tell them what they can win.
Oh, okay. Let's see, you could win a whole bunch of stuff from Wisconsin Public Radio. There's some glasses, t-shirts, frisbees, some CDs from like Simply Folk and whatnot. We have a copy of one of Lowell Yeager's books, and so if you're the winner, you can get him to sign it when he comes back. And also 2 tickets to the 25th Annual Putnam County Spelling Bee, which is being performed right here in this theater on what dates, Sarah? The first 2 weekends of November, right? 2, 3, 4. Okay.
I will throw in a signed copy of my book as well. Not that you'd want it, but if you do, I'll find a signed copy of my book as well. Or unsigned if you don't want it signed. You probably want it signed. It's worth big money. Okay, everybody ready to vote? It's a blind vote, so if these are your friends, they won't know that you didn't vote for them. So we got Matt, $1,200. Rachel, The Rock of Grace. Oh, The Rock of Grace, good title. Monarch Butterflies. Grade School Memories. Spud's Valentine. The Smell of You. The Rabbit. I like that's like these are the end people. They get out there too, even though they were part of the thing. Patrick, The Voice of God. Connie, You're the Love of My Life. And Yeager, They Lifted Me Up. 3 teachers. Those are great summaries of people's stories. Who wrote those up? Good job, Julie. Yay, Julie. I love smart, cool people. Okay, so everybody voted, didn't they, already? I guess I'm killing time. That's good. I'm pretty good at killing time, actually. No, you don't want to be. Hey, real quick, this is interesting to me. I found out today. I'm driving up here, and my wife's like, oh my God. Then she actually text, oh my God, in different texts. And I'm like, oh, this is exciting. Like, what's happening? And she's been so upset about the whole Kavanaugh thing. I was like, I didn't want to be talked to her at all. She's just like, she's ready to burn down the house, this kind of thing. No patriarchy jokes this week, guys. It doesn't work. Trust me, I tried one. It didn't work at all. Hey, that reminds me. It wasn't a very good idea. So anyway, that was kind of one right there. Not really. Anyway, she's, oh my God. And I'm like, okay, basically like, what? I'm driving, what? And she's like, The Price is Right is coming to Madison, and they're doing a on the road show in Madison. And she's like, you have to be a contestant, Charles, on The Price is Right. She was so excited. She said, I'm gonna make it happen. I'm gonna talk to people. I gotta make it happen. So all day I've been thinking, I wanna, like, what do I want? Like, how exciting could that be? That would be awesome to be on Price is Right. Don't you think that'd be awesome on Price is Right? And I'm like, what do I want? Part of me would want the car. Let's be honest, I'm not stupid. But what I really want is the turtle wax. Could you imagine if you won that? Because you know what I would do if I won that? I'd put the turtle wax on my desk at work. And every time people would be like, why the hell do you have turtle wax on your desk at work? And I'm like, I was on The Price is Right. Now I'm telling you. It's like I don't know how she's gonna make that happen, but she's the kind of person that can make that happen. Pretty excited. It's happening in the building she works, so I think she's gonna, I don't know who she knows. She knows somebody. So if that happens, I'll come back and tell you about The Price is Right. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. So I wonder who's gonna win. Could you guys go any slower, or how are things going over there? I know, I'm sorry. God. Yes, anarchy. I lived in an anarchist squat for 2 years when I lived my first 2 years in Prague. And I look back at that now, and I'm like, oh my God, making decisions there was a nightmare. Like, I can see people, I can't remember who quoted, I think it was Trotsky, said people would choose fascism over anarchy. And I'm like, yeah. Like every breakfast, we'd have like a collective, 40 of us live together, and we'd have like to make decisions about things, and you're just like. And I remember this is my favorite moment, because my wife would hang out there with me sometimes when we were first dating. It was like a hardcore, everybody in black, bunch of punks living in this squat together. If you guys don't know what squat's like, we like took over a house illegally and lived in this illegal house in Prague. And we all had like dreadlocks, and it was like, ugh, whatever. And this discussion going on for 3 days. We were a vegan squat, so everybody had to keep it vegan. I wasn't a vegan, but I'm like, that's cool. It was a cool place to live. And I would eat, I'd go eat meat outside. I wouldn't tell people. I'd go get sauerkraut and pork because I was in Prague. Czech Republic, you eat a lot of, I'm like, God, they were vegan. And the discussion that went on for days was, is honey vegan? And then they'd start it again. And of course, it was different languages, so things had to be translated. So it was really monotonous. It went forever. And you're like sipping coffee. And for me, it was like most of them would be hungover. I'm sipping coffee and be like, well, do the bees feel pain? And I'm like, God damn. And it went on for days. And I remember this because at one point, I was like, I quit. They're like, what do you mean you quit? No, I'm moving out. Because this is the most ridiculous thing. I'd rather pay rent than put up with this discussion of honey's vegan. I don't know. The other thing, there's a mistake. I don't know what they decided. Like, I'm not sure. I don't know how you guys feel about if honey's vegan or not. But I'm like, come on. It was so frustrating. It was pretty funny. You guys aren't fighting, are you? Stay friends. We are being anarchists as well. Are you just spontaneously pick the person you like?
So someone had a last-minute anarchist idea that we like, which is to put everyone's name in a hat and pick at random.
Oh. Everyone's name in the hat, pick at random. How do you guys feel about that? What if I say no? It's your rule. Okay, this is exciting. Oh, do I get to do it? I know God feels. But God, of course, already knows who's going to win. Oh, I feel nervous. Hold on a second. Okay. Ooh, I know who won. None of you guys know. That's very exciting. Whose handwriting? Is this your handwriting? I think this is yours. It's beautiful. Is that your handwriting? Oh, no. That was one actually from... somebody there. Whoever this is has beautiful handwriting. Emily, with monarch butterflies, wins the bag of stuff. Yes. It's exciting. Congratulations, Emily. But it's a weird kind of a congratulations because I just pulled out of a hat. So I'm glad you got it, though. But that's kind of like life, right? Isn't it a little bit like life? Boom. So I'm going to share something with you real quick before we... Oh.
No, please.
Oh, sorry. Real quick, because I think it's important, because not about grace, but about story. Last year I was on a book tour. I went all around the country doing stuff, and my book is about mental illness. So like I said, people bring about of heaviness to... When you write a book about that, you got to be cool about that. But I also had a rule that I wouldn't let anybody under 18 come to my performances because it was pretty mature, like really mature. So I wouldn't let them come. But if their parents said it was okay and they would come to the thing, and a couple times parents would say I want her to come, mostly because the kid would be mentally ill, right? Could be 17 and have mental illness. I'm like, okay, they want to come, but I'm like, hey, some heavy business in there. I'm not, whatever. So I was in Dallas, Texas. It's hot as hell. It's in the summer, and this mom comes with her daughter, and she's young. She's like 15 years old. And I remember her because she was wearing a turtleneck sweater, big, thick turtleneck sweater. I'm like, Jesus, it's like 100 degrees out. So it's kind of in my mind, I remember that. And her mom's like, I want her to come. She just got out of a mental hospital. She's having a hard time. I'm like, fine, So I was given the thing, and I tell everybody, look, I'm going to talk for about half an hour, and at the end of it, we'll have a Q&A, right? But so, like, basically, it's like a little dog and pony show, so let me do my thing, and then we'll talk afterwards. So literally, right in the middle of me talking, and I was just talking about my medication. I used to take medication, go off medication, take medication, off medication, as most people do, are crazy. And she's like right here, right? And I was like thrown off by her because she looked hot. She was making me uncomfortable because she looked like she was really hot in the sweater. And I'm sitting there, and she's young, she's like 15, and I'm sitting there right in the middle of the thing, and she stands up. I'm like, okay, whatever. And then she takes off her sweater, which is quite striking, a 15-year-old girl with a bra on now standing in the front row with a sweater, and then she goes like this. Huge scars, down her big, thick scars down her arms and her wrists, big, thick scars on her jugular vein, and she stood there. And she looked at me, and I was like, oh my. And I look at her, and she says, do you resent them? That's it. That's all she said. And I'm like, I have no idea, really, in some levels, what she's talking about. But I think she needs something from me right now, and I better give it, and I better give the right thing, even though I don't know what it is. So I kind of did this thing. I sat down like this. The same kind of stage, right? They're all the same. And so now we're like super close to each other, right? And I tell her a story about my life when I was her age, and I had just got out of mental hospital as well. And I tell her an honest story. That wasn't even in the book. I just tell her a story. And she's staring at me. She gets really close to me. It's very uncomfortable because she's like a 15-year-old girl with a bra on staring at me who has these huge scars on her body, and she made me uncomfortable. And I shared a story with her. And immediately, she shares the story with me of the last time she tried to kill herself. The whole audience is just like rapt, right? And we look at each other. I share that with you because it's a very famous quote from Ira Glass from This American Life, and he says, if you want to get a story, share a story. And if you share a story, expect to get one. And we gave each other a story, because stories have power. You know, David Isay, if you guys know David Isay, he does StoryCorps, are the coolest thing in public radio, and travels around the country in RVs and collects stories from people. There's a famous quote that says, listening is an act of love. And I would say that so is sharing is an act of love, sharing a story. So I share that with you because I think it's important to understand the importance of sharing our stories with each other. It has meaning. That girl, did I save her life? I don't know, I'm not gonna go that far to say save her life, but she needed something, and what she needed was a story. And I needed her story. It was actually very enriching for me, the way she spoke to me. And it was the most powerful thing that happened to me on the whole tour. So share your story, and if you share the story, expect to get a story, and if you get a story, expect to share your story. That's what I leave you with. Thank you.
Please, not done clapping yet. One more round of applause for Mr. Monroe Kane, please, for hosting us this evening. And for all of our storytellers, thank you very much for sharing your stories with us, whether you planned on it or not. Yeah, it was wonderful to hear some great stories. But on that note, two things. One, if all people who told the stories wouldn't mind coming up toward the front of the stage, I'd like to get your picture. But also, the LNFA would like to maybe put this up on their YouTube channel. So we would like, any who haven't already would need to sign a release, unless you're not okay with that. And if not, then you would just be edited out, and that's fine. We understand. But you already did it once. What's the internet for being, whatever. You shouldn't mind. Yeah, so thank you all very much for coming. Hey.